Hello, this is MyFatoorah technical support team. In this video, we are introducing the integration steps for the embedded payment. The embedded payment enables you to add the card form, Apple Pay, and Google Pay buttons on your website in a single integration. So let's get started. We will use an HTML file to represent your front end and Swagger to demonstrate the API requests you will send from the backend. All the sample codes that we're going to be using can be found in our documentation. First, we will explain the requirements for the basic implementation of the embedded payment. First, include the JavaScript library in your front-end code. Make sure to choose the link based on the environment and the country of your account with MyFatoorah. Define a div element in which the embedded payment will be loaded. The div element has to have a unique ID. You will pass this ID to the configuration variable. Configure the embedded payment in a variable. Call the MyFatoorah.init function with the variable as an argument. To get a session ID to add in the configuration, you have to call the initiate session endpoint. This endpoint will return a session ID and the country code for your account. Each payment attempt has to have a new session ID. The country code is fixed for your account, so you can add it in your code as a static value. The currency code represents the currency of the gateway in which the payment needs to be processed. You have to use a gateway currency enabled for your account. You can identify the enabled gateway currencies for your account from the parameter payment currency ISO from the response of the initiate payment endpoint. The amount represents the amount that will be displayed to your customers on the payment sheet for Apple Pay and Google Pay. In the container ID, you have to pass the name that you assigned as the ID of the div element you created for the embedded payment. In the payment options, you specify which payment methods you want to display. The methods are displayed in the same order that you pass to this parameter. The default value, if you haven't passed any, is the card only. In the callback, you pass a function that will be triggered once the customer completes the payment steps from his side. Handle the callback function. The callback function enables you to take the next actions after the customer completes the payment steps. After the callback is triggered, you have to send the session ID to the backend to complete to the next step. Call execute payment using the session ID. You will get in the response the payment URL that takes the customer to the OTP page to complete the payment. You can either redirect the customer to the OTP page or open the OTP in an iframe on your checkout page. Please note that in the case of Apple Pay, the payment URL doesn't take to an OTP page, so you can either redirect the customer to it, which will take him to the result page, or you can invoke it in your backend and display the result to your customers immediately. Let's make an attempt for paying using the embedded payment with what we have described now. So first, we have to call the initiate session endpoint. So you can call the initiate session endpoint using an open and close curly braces only. And as you can see in the response, we got the session ID and the country code that we will use in our configuration. So here I will pass the session ID. The country code is Kuwait because we are testing in the demo, and the amount is 20 and the currency code is KWD. Please note that I'm using the demo URL for the JavaScript. Here also I defined a callback function that will log the response that I get in the console so that we can take a look at it. And also I defined a div element that I called unified session as seen here that I'm using in the container ID parameter. So let's go ahead and open this file. This is the default display that the customers will see in the embedded payment. So let's pay with card. And before we click on pay now, let's open the console to see what we get in the callback function. So once I click on pay now, I will get some information regarding the payment. First, I get the payment type, whether it's card, Apple Pay, or Google Pay. I get the same session ID that I used to load the view. I get the card brand that is being used and the card identifier, which is a unique identifier for the cards being used. So the next step for us to do is to call execute payment using this session ID. And since this is a card payment, I have to open the OTP page. In this example, we will redirect to the OTP page. and the customer will click on submit, and the payment will be complete. In the upcoming section, we will cover customizing the embedded payment. You can make general customizations that will affect all the payment methods. So first, we have the supported networks. This enables you to decide what card brands you want to accept the payments from. You can choose from Visa, MasterCard, Meta, and Amex. Language changes the default language of the text displayed on the card form, Apple Pay and Google Pay. The language can be English or Arabic. You can also make customizations that will affect specific payment methods only. To do this, you will add the settings nested objects in the configuration object, and inside the settings, you can manage each payment method separately. We will start with the cards. Let's go ahead and open the cards file. So first, we have the on-card bin changed. MyFatoorah triggers the function on-card bin change when the customer enters his bin number in the card form. The bin number is returned in the function. You can use this for further business decisions. Just for the sake of an example, you can apply a discount for bins that belong to a specific bank. Then we have the style parameter. The style parameter enables you to customize the design of the card form on your checkout page. And inside it, we have the hide network icons. This enables you to hide or display the logos for the card brands. Then we have the card height and token height, which are for managing the view of the card form in the embedded payment, on new card payment, and on saved card view. Then we have the input object. This enables you to manage the font of the text being entered by the customers in the card form. You can also manage the placeholders from the input down below. Then we have the text. Text object customizes the text written on the card for managing saving cards. Then we have the label. The label customizes the labels that could be added over the fields of the card form. Then we have the error. The error object makes you manage the look of the fields on wrong input from the customers, like invalid card number, for example. Then we have the button. The button enables you to manage the button on which the customer clicks after filling the card information. And there are 3 scenarios that you can rely on for the customer to click on the button to complete the payment. First, using MyFatoorah's default behavior, which we saw in our current example. In this case, MyFatoorah manages all the functionalities of the button and returns to you the session ID in the callback function to call execute payment. The second scenario is where you are using MyFatoorah's button but with customized functionalities. In this case, you will be using the MyFatoorah payment button. However, you can handle the functionality of the button. In the function definition, you have to call the MyFatoorah.submit card payment. You can add other functionalities when the button is clicked. To do this, you will see here in the button that you will say use custom button as false. However, here in the on button clicked, you have to define your own function and then define its functionality in your code, and you have to make sure that you are going to call the MyFatoorah.submit card payment function. The third scenario is where you will be using your own button with its functionalities. In this case, you will be creating the button on your side and you will manage its functionalities fully. Again, it is mandatory to call the function MyFatoorah.submit card payment when the customer clicks on the payment button. In order to achieve this, we have to set the use custom button to true, and then we can comment the rest out of the section. Then we need to add our code for the button. So I've added this button and I'm calling this function. And inside this function, we have to call the function MyFatoorah.submit card payment as I'm doing here. Then we have the separator. The separator enables you to customize the separator displayed on the embedded payment before the card form. Please note that if you want to utilize the Save Card feature for the embedded card payments, do the following steps. When you're calling the initiate session endpoint, you have to call it with a unique customer identifier for each one of your customers. MyFatoorah saves the cards across the customer identifier. For the first payment, the customer is prompted to decide whether he wants to save his card or not. If he saves his card, in the subsequent payments, MyFatoorah will display the saved card as a masked card, and the customer will have to pass his CVV. If you want to utilize this feature, please make sure to contact your account manager to enable it for your account. Next, let's move for Apple Pay. A prerequisite to use Apple Pay is that you have to verify your domain. Host the domain verification file in the directory .well-known in the root path of your domain. You should get the file from the technical support team of MyFatoorah. Once you have done this step, please call the register Apple Pay domain endpoint from MyFatoorah APIs. After getting a 200 status code from the endpoint, you can now use Apple Pay successfully on your website. So let's move to the configuration parameters. We have first the supported networks. This enables you to set what car brands you want to accept in Apple Pay specifically. This overrides the general config supported networks for Apple Pay only. Container ID enables you to have a dedicated div element for Apple Pay, and you pass the value of the Apple Pay div ID to it. Callback enables you to have a dedicated callback function for Apple Pay that will be triggered once the customer completes the payment steps for Apple Pay successfully. Then we have the language. The language enables you to change the language in which the text will be displayed on the Apple Pay button. Then we have the Use Custom button. This enables you to add your own button from Apple Pay. However, please make sure to follow the Apple Pay guidelines for the design of the Apple Pay button. You must call the function MyFatoorah.init Apple Pay payment when the customer clicks on the button. Session started and session cancelled. These are triggered once the customer clicks on the Apple Pay button or cancels the payment via Apple Pay respectively. Required shipping contact fields and required billing contact fields forces the customers to enter their fields that you pass in the array in his Apple Pay wallet to be able to proceed with this payment. The information that they enter here is then returned to you in the callback function. Then we have the style parameter. The style parameter enables you to customize the display of the Apple Pay button. Then we have Google Pay. For Google Pay, we have first the supported networks, which enables you to set what card brands you want to accept in Google Pay specifically. This overrides the general config supported networks for Google Pay only. Then we have the container ID, which enables you to have a dedicated div element for Google Pay only, and you pass the value of the Google Pay div ID to it. Callback enables you to have a dedicated callback function for Google Pay that will be triggered once the customer completes the payment steps for Google Pay successfully. Style, this enables you to customize the display of Google Pay button on your form. Let's take the sample code from our documentation and display the end result of editing all the payment options to see how it could look like. Remember, this is just an example of how you could redesign the embedded payment. You can always do more. So to get a sample code of the entire embedded payment, you go to sample code here and you can just copy this. Let's open it in our file. Let's go ahead and add a session ID. Let's add the amount to be 20, just like we did before. And let's go ahead and open this. Let's make a payment and let's open the console. And here I'm logging the bin number also in the console. So you can see that the on-card bin change enables me to get the bin number once I have entered them. And again, if I click on pay, I will get the response of the callback function in the console, and I'm logging it in the console. Thank you for watching this video guide on the embedded payment. We hope this facilitates the integration with MyFatoorah and gives you and your customers a more seamless payment experience.